The twilight fractured and spilled through the stained glass windows, dappling the marble floor of St. Jude's Chapel with shards of ruby and sickly gold. The atmosphere, which ought to have been still and reverent, was now thick with scrutiny under the presence of one person. Sister Isabella, only 3 days into her role as the chief cultivator, stood upon the pulpit. She did not need to raise her voice, her low, slightly husky tone carried absolute weight, like statutes etched in stone. Starting tomorrow, Isabella spoke leisurely, her cold, honey-colored eyes sweeping over the dozens of nuns sitting solemnly. All outside charity and volunteer work will be indefinitely suspended. We need to focus on financial restoration and internal order. Our oath is service. And right now, the greatest service is discipline. It was a cold, sharp sword stroke, severing the convent's link with the outside world. Several sisters lowered their gaze, exchanging wary glances. The opposition was silent, yet palpable. Isabella knew it well. She gave a subtle, barely perceptible smirk. Discipline was a veneer. Her true objective was absolute control, clearing out what she viewed as the laxity eroding the structure of power. "Do you mean discipline? Or are you locking us up, Chief Cultivator?" The voice rang out from the back row, equally cold but carrying overt defiance. All eyes turned to Sister Vera. She was the youngest, yet her spirit was the strongest. Sharp eyes, a resolute chin, she seemed born to dissent. Isabella turned fully, her eyes locking onto Vera. She had anticipated this. "Sister Vera," Isabella named the girl, her voice like a whetted stone. "This is a meeting to issue directives, not a democratic debate." Vera took a step forward, ignoring the warning. "Serving the destitute is our most sacred vow. Ideals cannot pay the bills, but bills cannot save a life. We are not prisoners to be confined, Your Eminence." Vera's arrogance flared, confronting Isabella's frigid composure. Isabella stepped down from the pulpit, closing the distance. She raised a hand, delicately extracting a silver lighter from her robe pocket. A dry, sharp click echoed. She lit the cigarette already placed on her lips, exhaling a thin wisp of smoke. This action was the most direct challenge to all church protocols, a declaration of personal authority. "Respect, Sister Vera, comes from sustained existence," Isabella replied, her voice still low. "And currently, this convent is facing the threat of foreclosure. I would rather be called a tyrant than an incompetent chief cultivator, allowing the holy sanctuary to be sold to infidels." Vera paused. She looked directly into the smoke, her eyes momentarily wavering before Isabella's sheer determination and ruthlessness. But then she gave a scornful sneer, a stubborn and indomitable smile. "Then act like a chief cultivator. Don't hide behind bans. Find a real solution, not just shackles." The tension between the two exploded into an electric current. Isabella saw in Vera the fierceness and courage she herself had buried. Vera saw the loneliness and burden behind Isabella's iron facade. Both were dangerously drawn to that very opposition. Isabella nodded, accepting this unofficial challenge. "Very well, Sister Vera," she said, her voice slightly softened, laden with hidden meaning. "I like that audacity. Tomorrow, I will assign you a special mission. It concerns a confidential file that I need, one that might save this convent from foreclosure. This file is being monitored by an external organization, and it is hidden in the restricted section of the central cathedral. If you find it, you will prove the worth of this defiance." She reached out, placing a black envelope on the altar near Vera. "If you fail, you will abandon all outside ideals of justice and accept all my rules. If you succeed." Isabella took one last drag of her cigarette, tossed the butt onto the floor, and stepped on it. "I will consider negotiating your freedom." Sister Vera stared at the pitch-black envelope on the altar, feeling as though it contained not paper, but a declaration of war. She picked it up. The material was rough, unsealed, like an arrogant invitation from Isabella. As the meeting concluded and the other nuns rushed away with whispered indignation, Vera remained standing, waiting for the heavy wooden door to shut. She felt a gaze following her, a silent, intense presence from the chief cultivator's chamber upstairs. She knew Isabella was waiting for a sign, a submission or a new challenge. Instead of bowing her head, Vera silently held the envelope and walked away without a sound, determined not to let her pride be subdued by the other woman's coldness. Around midnight, The entire convent sank into a deep, chilling sleep. Vera, clad in a voluminous black nun's habit, moved like a shadow through the dark stone hallway. She paused before the chief cultivator's office, a place that was normally forbidden ground. The door was unlocked. Another provocation. She stepped inside. The room was vast and dim, illuminated only by faint moonlight filtering through the Gothic window and a small oil lamp placed on the desk, enough to light Isabella's sharp features. The chief cultivator was not wearing her habit, only a cream-colored turtleneck sweater, her hair down, her feet propped up on the desk, a half-smoked cigarette clenched between her long, slender fingers. The image revealed a profane, breathtakingly mysterious beauty, completely juxtaposed against her divine role. "You've arrived," Isabella uttered, her voice hoarse as if she had been waiting a long time. "I thought you would send a letter of protest." Vera shut the door, the dry sound echoing like a lock clicking shut. "I don't waste time on meaningless rhetoric. I came to hear the negotiation details for my freedom." Isabella sneered, a thin wisp of cigarette smoke curling around her dark hair. "Your defiance is truly commendable. The girl's name is Alara. She is the former secretary of my predecessor and currently holds a ledger, which records every illicit transaction that could lead to this convent's debt being seized. She is under house arrest in the north wing of the central cathedral. Your mission is to bring her out within 48 hours. Vera frowned. "The restricted section? The central cathedral is not under your jurisdiction." "That is correct," Isabella admitted, placing the cigarette in an ashtray. She rose, walking slowly toward Vera, each step intensifying the invisible pressure. "That is why I need someone who doesn't obey rules to go in there. That section is guarded by the Supreme Council. The very people who want me to fail. More dangerously, they know you are a rebel, and they will use you to trap me. But I trust your recklessness." Isabella stopped, now only a breath away from Vera. The oil lamp highlighted the captivating contours of her face. Vera sensed the expensive aroma of tobacco and some costly perfume, mingling with the faint incense of the convent. The danger and the allure emanating from Isabella formed a deadly spiral. Vera had to fight the urge to retreat. "What you are proposing is a betrayal," Vera murmured, her breath heavy. "Yes," Isabella whispered, leaning down until the warmth of her lips nearly brushed Vera's ear. "But this is the only betrayal that can protect what you cherish. Sister Vera, if you do this, you will not only prove your worth to me, but you will also give me a debt. And this chief cultivator always pays her debts handsomely." She stepped back, leaving a small but electric void. Her eyes flashed with challenge. Vera understood. This was not just a mission, but an exchange of power and trust. She looked directly into Isabella's eyes, her own burning fiercely. She would not accept control, but she accepted this challenge. "I require the blueprints of the restricted section," Vera stated, her voice hardening. "And an oath. If I succeed, you must end the volunteer ban immediately." Isabella broke into a smile of satisfaction, a rare and dangerous smile. "Sister Vera, I admire your negotiation style. The blueprints are already in the envelope. Good luck, rebel. We are not allowed to meet again until you bring Alara back." Vera nodded, turned her back, and quickly dissolved into the darkness, carrying the weight of secrecy, taboo, and the indelible image of Isabella in the night. Their forbidden romance had officially begun, forged in danger and their mutual defiance. The north wing of the central cathedral loomed like a solitary fortress beneath the crescent moon. It lacked the ornate flourishes of their convent. It possessed only gray stone walls and narrow windows, its sole purpose being confinement. Vera moved along the moss-covered wall, her breath light and steady. She had spent the entire morning studying the rudimentary but precise blueprints Isabella had provided. It was a labyrinth of hallways and detention cells, secured by a classical mechanical lock system, which Vera had mastered since her days as a street child. Her black habit became the perfect camouflage, allowing her to hide in the profound shadows of the ramparts. She scaled a rusted drainpipe with astonishing agility, behaving more like an operative than a nun. Every movement was sure-footed, causing no sound that could disturb the nocturnal owls. As she set foot on the ledge of the second-floor window, Isabella's sharp image flashed through her mind. A woman who dared to smoke in the sanctuary and use a nun like her as a pawn. "She trusts my recklessness," Vera thought to herself, feeling a cold current run down her spine. It was not just trust, but a personal challenge that made retreat impossible. The window was secured by an intricate brass latch. Vera pulled out a tiny, exquisite set of metal tools, carefully threading them into the lock mechanism. Her fingers moved in a familiar dance, listening to the gentle clicks of the tumblers inside. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from fear, but from intense concentration. She had to complete this, not for Isabella or the convent, but to prove she was worthy of the freedom she demanded. Freedom is bought with defiance and recklessness, she told herself. A definitive click. The lock was open. Vera slid inside. The corridor was narrow and cold, saturated with the scent of mildew and old dust. She realized she was in the hallway of the old detention cells, where Ilara was being held. She advanced, pressing herself against the wall, listening to the heavy, regular breathing of the 2 night guards on duty. As the first patrolman passed, Vera swiftly concealed herself behind a heavy velvet curtain. The moment he walked by, she gently darted out, a cloth soaked in anesthetic clenched in her hand. With a single, neat motion, she clamped it over his mouth and nose. The guard only managed a small, muffled sound before collapsing. The operation was quick and decisive. That was why Isabella had chosen her. Ilara's cell was at the end of the corridor. Upon unlocking it, Vera found a young girl, disheveled but with a spark of sharpness still in her eyes, huddled on a metal cot. "Sister Ilara?" Vera whispered. Ilara looked up, her eyes wide with terror. Who are you?" "I am Sister Vera. I was sent to take you out of here. Chief Cultivator Isabella sent me." Just hearing the name, Ilara trembled. "Isabella? She is a demon. She cares about no one but herself." Vera knelt, her gaze unwavering. "I know what she is like. But she needs you. Do you have the ledger? If we don't get out of here immediately, both you and the convent will be swallowed whole by those behind the Supreme Council." She reached out a hand. "Trust me, I am also a dissenter of those in power. Give me the ledger and follow me." Ilara hesitated for a moment. Then, as if persuaded by the determination and zeal in Vera's eyes, the girl tremblingly handed her a small, worn leather-bound notebook. Clenching the evidence in her hand, Vera felt an electric current run through her. Now, she and Isabella were bound by a shared, dangerous secret. The mission was not over, but the first perilous turning point had been established. The worn leather-bound ledger felt hot in Vera's hand, heavy like the burden of an entire collapsing institution. Escaping the North Wing with Ilara was exponentially harder than the break-in. Ilara was shaking with fear, her steps heavy and prone to making noise. Vera had to continuously signal, acting as both guide and shield. She used every nook, every shadow of the central cathedral as an ally. When they finally crossed the back gate, the faint moonlight only illuminated their exhaustion and fatigue. Vera led Ilara around the forest path behind the convent, where there were no lights or bells. In the darkness, Vera felt Ilara's rapid breathing near her ear, the scent of fear diffusing in the cold air. She knew she was not merely executing an assignment, she was protecting a vulnerable person. Something Isabella had overlooked in her frigid calculations. "That is the difference between us," Vera told herself. "She seeks order, and I seek justice." However, when she thought of Isabella, the image was no longer the distant chief cultivator. It was the woman in the turtleneck sweater, smoking profanely, her sharp eyes full of provocation. A forbidden and dangerous attraction spread, forcing her to focus on the path ahead. They reached an old warehouse hidden behind the convent's apple orchard, the secret rendezvous Isabella had designated. The rickety wooden door was pushed gently open. Inside, the room held only a wooden table and an oil lamp. And Isabella was there. She was not wearing her habit but a simple, well-fitted black ensemble, her hair neatly tied back, exuding raw authority. She was sipping a glass of red wine, staring intently at the oil lamp, and did not turn around as they entered. Vera pushed Ilara forward, then slammed the door shut. The sound was like the closing of a gate to truth and danger. "She is here, Chief Cultivator," Vera announced, her voice hoarse with fatigue. Isabella set the wineglass down, slowly turning. Her eyes swept over the terrified Ilara, then settled completely on Vera. There was no greeting, no praise, only a frigid assessment. "On time, and alive. I expected nothing less," Isabella said, her words devoid of emotion. She held out her hand. The ledger. Vera did not hand it over immediately. She stepped forward, placing the notebook on the table. But her hand remained tightly gripping it. You need the ledger. I need my negotiated freedom. Isabella stared at Vera. In that moment, their mutual defiance and arrogance clashed. Isabella saw a desirable stubbornness in Vera's eyes. Vera saw a subtle admiration flash across Isabella's cold demeanor. Finally, Isabella gave a nod, a small but loaded motion. She reached out, gently peeling Vera's fingers from the notebook, brushing against her warm skin. The unexpected, light contact caused Vera to flinch momentarily. Both seemed to forget Alara, huddled in the corner of the room. Very well, Sister Vera, Isabella murmured, her voice becoming deeper. She took the notebook, quickly flipping through the pages. You have now completed your part. Remember, I am a keeper of oaths. Starting tomorrow, I will review the relaxation of the volunteer ban. After I use this information to stabilize everything. Isabella looked straight into Vera, her gaze filled with possession. And now, I could keep you here. You have proven you are too valuable an asset for me to let you return to the other fools. Tell me, rebel, how do you wish to negotiate your freedom? The question was no longer professional. It was an invitation into the dangerous game of power and desire between them. Isabella held the ledger, but her gaze never left Vera. Her question, how do you wish to negotiate your freedom, was not one about rules, but a dangerous invitation. Alara had been moved to another secure room under Isabella's orders. Now, only the two women remained in the cold warehouse. And the silence was thicker than any stone wall. You know what I want, Vera replied, her voice steady but laced with caution. I want the freedom to do what I believe is right. You want me to stay to protect this decaying convent. Then, give me a real reason to believe that your calculations are more noble than my ideals. Isabella gave a scornful, small, dry sound of a laugh. She took a sip of red wine, her eyes seeming to burn Vera. Your ideals are beautiful, Sister Vera, but they are the daylight. And I am the night. I understand that to preserve a shred of goodness, one must accept doing dirty work in the dark. She set the glass down, stepping closer to the wooden table. This convent is the last anchor of my family lineage. They want to use it as a political tool. I came in here, under the guise of a nun, to do what no one else dared, sever them. You see me smoke, you see me dictatorial, but that is the armor I must wear to deal with the wolves in sheep's clothing outside. Isabella gazed deep into Vera's eyes. The look was no longer frigid, but a silent plea, an acknowledged desperation. So you admit you are lonely? Vera whispered, her voice carrying a hint of pity, a hint of triumph. Loneliness is a prerequisite for power. Isabella countered sharply, but her tone was softened. Sister, you have seen me in the guise of the Chief Cultivator. Now look at the Isabella standing before you. She reached out, gently sweeping back a loose strand of Vera's hair. The contact was so light it was almost non-existent, yet it ignited a secret fire between them. Your mission has given me something that cannot be bought with money or power. Isabella continued, her voice becoming lethally alluring. That is an equal, someone who dares to confront, dares to talk back, and is fearless. I am always surrounded by those who bow and obey. Sister Vera, your defiance is the only thing I crave right now. Vera felt her heart rate quicken. This proximity was more dangerous than any guard she had faced. She took one step back, but her eyes never left Isabella. You are trying to manipulate me with intimacy, Vera stated, an assertion rather than a question. You want me to stay because I am a valuable pawn, not because I am a person. That is the difference between us, Isabella replied, a cryptic smile playing on her lips. She advanced, closing the remaining distance. Sister Vera, I do not want to control you. I want to consolidate. You need justice. I need order. You need freedom. I need you. Stay by my side. As the sole lawbreaker, you will gain the freedom to do whatever you wish, provided you return to me every night. That is our arrangement. It was the most forbidden proposition, a sinful invitation that no nun could have imagined. It was not merely a physical demand, but a consolidation of two defiant spirits. Vera looked into Isabella's honey-colored eyes, where loneliness and desire burned intensely. She had found a worthy adversary, one who could see through her arrogance, and wanted to embrace it. Silence enveloped them. Vera raised her hand, lightly touching Isabella's face. This time, The initiative was hers. "You risked me, Chief Cultivator," Vera whispered, almost a vow. "I accept this risk." Vera's touch on Isabella's cheek was not a tender gesture, but an assertion of ownership over risk. The mutual consent exploded between them like an electric spark. In the flickering oil lamp light of the warehouse, the cold facade and the thick habits seemed to vanish, leaving only two women bound by ambition and forbidden desire. "You risked me, Chief Cultivator," Vera repeated, her eyes sharp as knives, yet containing a blazing fire. "I accept this risk." Isabella closed her eyes for a fleeting moment, as if acknowledging a sinful confession. When she opened them, all traces of defense were gone, replaced by possession and triumphant joy. Then, Isabella whispered, her voice low and husky, "Let me see the freedom you fought for. Let me see the reason you dared to break every rule just to get what you want." Without another word, Vera leaned in. She did not kiss, but rather invaded Isabella's personal space. Her kiss was not tender, it was a confrontation. An act of defiance. Vera sought resistance, but found only a more fervent, fierce reciprocation. Isabella trapped Vera's face between her palms, her fingers tightly gripping the neatly tied back hair. The nakedness of the moment was more horrifying than any torn vow. This was a betrayal of everything sacred they had committed to, and that very fact created an absolute arousal. Isabella pulled back, her eyes glowing with authority. She deliberately took Vera's hand, leading her to the only wooden chair in the room. "The night is long, Sister Vera, and we have many things to negotiate." She did not release Vera's hand, but pulled her down, forcing her to sit intimately close to her on the narrow chair. This position was not just intimate, but imposing. Vera was forced to face Isabella at every moment. "Tell me," Isabella commanded, her voice lower, more cryptic. "How did you seek justice before becoming a nun? I want to hear everything. The hidden corners, the rules you broke. I want to understand your power." Vera felt the electric current emanating from where their bodies touched. Isabella did not only want a physical exchange, she wanted Vera's soul. She wanted to tear away the layer of the nun's habit and touch the inherent defiance within. Under the fierce urging of Isabella's gaze, Vera began to tell her story. She spoke of the slums, of the small injustices she had to intervene in, and of the skills in breaking in and picking locks she had learned to survive. Her voice was dry, but every word contained a burning passion for justice. As Vera spoke, Isabella listened intently, her eyes never leaving Vera. Occasionally, she would tighten her grip on Vera's hand, not to stop her, but to encourage the openness, to affirm that she understood and accepted every hidden corner. It was a seductive and intellectual prelude. They were not just exploring each other's bodies, but also the mutual desires, sins, and vulnerabilities. By the end, when the tension reached its peak, Isabella was no longer the chief cultivator, and Vera was no longer a nun. They were two defiant adversaries who had found each other in the forbidden darkness of a powerful covenant. After the night in the warehouse, the relationship between Isabella and Vera was shrouded in a thick veil of secrecy, simultaneously overflowing with possessive tension and craving. Now, they were not just allies but two betrayers sharing one secret. Vera's defiance and strength were used by Isabella as a sharp weapon. And Vera, in turn, used Isabella's new power to fight for her ideals of justice. Isabella, with the ledger in hand, executed a series of bold moves. At the Supreme Council meeting of the convent, she was no longer a young, overshadowed chief cultivator. She appeared in a perfect black habit, her hair tightly pinned, and an aura as cold as ice. Every word she spoke was sharp evidence, exposing the illicit transactions and corruption of Bishop Victor, the leader of the opposition. "You wished for St. Jude's convent to be foreclosed upon and turned into profitable real estate?" Isabella uttered, her voice echoing throughout the conference room. "This ledger shows that Bishop Victor himself signed the transfer of funds into his personal account, leaving us with enormous debt. This is a betrayal of the vow of poverty and service." The victory was absolute. Bishop Victor was isolated, and Isabella's power was consolidated. Immediately, Isabella made good on her promise. The volunteer bans were relaxed, allowing Vera and the other nuns to return to their work serving the poor. Vera understood. Isabella had not given her freedom, but empowered her to continue the fight. That evening, Vera sought out Isabella's office. The unlocked room had become their secret sanctuary. Isabella stood by the window, holding a glass of red wine and a cigarette. "I kept my word," Isabella said, without turning around. "Your defiance brought the victory. I owe you." Vera stepped forward, took the glass from Isabella's hand, and took a sip. "You don't owe me. You rewarded yourself by eliminating an enemy." She placed the glass on the windowsill and wrapped her arms around Isabella from behind. "I needed to see that break. Isabella, I needed to know you didn't regret choosing risk and choosing me." Isabella relaxed into Vera's embrace. It was a rare moment she relinquished control. "I don't regret it," she murmured. "Vera, you are the most dangerous thing I have ever accepted. And the most worthwhile." Vera's arms tightened. They stood there, two powerful women who had found their vulnerability and strength in each other's arms. However, the sweetness did not last. The next morning, as Vera was in the warehouse area preparing for the volunteer trip, she spotted a strange object on her desk, a silver matchbox. Very similar to the one Isabella used, but it had been cruelly bent. Placed next to a blurry photo taken the previous night, the silhouette of two figures standing intimately close in the dark warehouse. Vera froze. She didn't need to clearly see the faces. That intimacy was enough to destroy them both. She knew it was a warning. Someone had discovered the covenant of the night. Not Bishop Victor, but another enemy, one more cunning and patient, who had been waiting to use this secret as a weapon of annihilation against Isabella. And now, Vera, the stubborn rebel, had become the ambitious Chief Cultivator's fatal weakness. The blurry photo and the bent silver matchbox in Vera's hand were not mere evidence, but a death sentence. She wasted no time. At noon, when Isabella was surrounded by nuns attempting to curry favor at the midday meal, Vera sent a tightly folded note. Only 3 words. Warehouse. Midnight. At midnight, the old warehouse once again became the stage for a dangerous battle of wits. Vera was already there, waiting in the darkness. When Isabella entered, the usual frigid composure on her face was replaced by an almost invisible tension. Vera presented the cruelly bent silver matchbox and the blurry photograph. Isabella did not utter a word. She took the box, her slender fingers touching the warped metal, her eyes seeming to pierce the silver surface. She recognized it instantly, a custom-made version, a gift she had received from her father. A personal message. "My father's item," Isabella whispered, her voice chillingly cold. "A gift from before I entered the convent. Only those closest to me would know." Vera stood opposite her, completely unfazed. "Who? Isabella? Who has the audacity to follow you and the intelligence to know that this is a personal warning specifically for you?" Isabella closed her eyes. She let out a long breath, full of suppressed fatigue and resentment. "Not Victor. He is merely a money-hungry pawn. This person must be a patient one. The one who stood behind all of Victor's schemes, waiting for me to clear the deck so he could show himself." She opened her eyes, her gaze sharper than ever, and turned to Vera. "It is Professor Marius, the former advisor to the Supreme Council, who holds underground influence within my family lineage. He has always wanted this convent to collapse so he could buy the land, turn it into a luxurious resort, and has repeatedly attempted to sabotage my father's reputation. He is intelligent, patient, and he knows how to play the family game." Vera strode closer to Isabella, anger and determination burning in her eyes. "He has shown us he knows. He knows about our covenant. He is holding both our lives and careers in his hands. We cannot hide anymore." Isabella nodded, her frigidity returning. "We won't hide. We will play bigger. He wants to destroy me by using you. We will turn that into our weapon." She placed the matchbox and the blurry photo down, walking straight to Vera. In the cramped space, this proximity was no longer purely seductive, but a dangerous, strategic consolidation. "I need you to be my eyes and ears on the outside." "Vera," Isabella whispered, her hand resting on Vera's shoulder. "The freedom I gave you is not a release, but an assignment. Exploit the relaxation of the volunteer band to approach the charity organizations and the people Marius has deceived. Find his weak spot, the transactions that Victor didn't know about, the secrets that lie deeper." Vera looked into Isabella's fiery eyes. She did not feel commanded. She felt empowered. "Do you trust me?" Vera asked, her voice challenging. "I am the defiant one. I can betray you at any moment." Isabella gave a rare, arrogant smile. She raised her hand, lightly stroking Vera's face, her finger tracing her cheekbone. "I trust you, because you are not a betrayer of rules but a betrayer of injustice. Vera, I entrust you with not only a mission, but my life and my power. If he exposes us, I will be expelled, and your reputation will be ruined. We sink together. I am not afraid of that, as long as I take him with me. But I need you to help me win." She leaned down, kissing Vera's forehead, a kiss of sovereignty and absolute trust. "Be the best outlaw, Sister Vera. Do what a chief cultivator cannot do. Do not return until you can hand me a genuine trump card." Vera nodded. Their secret oath had become an oath of life and death. She tightened her grip on Isabella's shoulders, feeling the rigidity of her bone structure and the deep-seated determination. She knew that from this moment on, her defiance was no longer solely hers. She turned her back, dissolving into the darkness, carrying the mission and the deadly allure of Chief Cultivator Isabella. Following the oath of life and death in the warehouse, Sister Vera vanished from the convent, donning her ordinary nun's habit but concealing the sharpness of a secret operative. She exploited Isabella's relaxed volunteer ban, using it as a perfect cover to approach places where Professor Marius might have left traces. Vera's defiance and her ability to see through people's true nature became powerful assets. She did not seek major financial evidence, but rather the loopholes in his human nature. Vera spent days in dark alleyways and impoverished slums, where Marius pretended to offer charity but was, in reality, exploiting people for manipulation. She spoke with those who had been deceived, the ones who had been victims of Bishop Victor and indirectly of Marius. Every story of suffering, every piece of distorted testimony, every fragment of Marius's greed was meticulously collected by Vera. She quickly realized, Marius's weakness was not money, but his absolute control over his reputation and his family. He constantly boasted about his daughter studying abroad, a girl he sheltered excessively. One night, Vera risked breaking into the private apartment Marius used to meet secret partners. A place that was luxurious and discreet. She didn't need a key, only her skilled hands and the stillness of a nun amidst the bustling city. Inside, there were no financial records, only an old laptop inside a safe. It was a huge risk, but Vera remembered Isabella's words. Do what a chief cultivator cannot do. She had mastered mechanical lockpicking, but technology was a new challenge. Under the faint light of her phone screen, Vera began to decipher the password. Her hand did not tremble, but her heart pounded relentlessly. She did not fear failure, but feared that failure meant pushing Isabella into danger. Following the oath of life and death in the warehouse, Sister Vera vanished from the convent, donning her ordinary nun's habit but concealing the sharpness of a secret operative. She exploited Isabella's relaxed volunteer ban, using it as a perfect cover to approach places where Professor Marius might have left traces. Vera's defiance and her ability to see through people's true nature became powerful assets. She did not seek major financial evidence, but rather the loopholes in his human nature. Vera spent days in dark alleyways and impoverished slums, where Marius pretended to offer charity but was, in reality, exploiting people for manipulation. She spoke with those who had been deceived, the ones who had been victims of Bishop Victor and indirectly of Marius. Every story of suffering, every piece of distorted testimony, every fragment of Marius's greed was meticulously collected by Vera. She quickly realized, Marius's weakness was not money, but his absolute control over his reputation and his family. He constantly boasted about his daughter studying abroad, a girl he sheltered excessively. One night, Vera risked breaking into the private apartment Marius used to meet secret partners. A place that was luxurious and discreet. She didn't need a key, only her skilled hands and the stillness of a nun amidst the bustling city. Inside, there were no financial records, only an old laptop inside a safe. It was a huge risk, but Vera remembered Isabella's words. Do what a chief cultivator cannot do. She had mastered mechanical lockpicking, but technology was a new challenge. Under the faint light of her phone screen, Vera began to decipher the password. Her hand did not tremble, but her heart pounded relentlessly. She did not fear failure, but feared that failure meant pushing Isabella into danger. In that moment of tension, Isabella's image flashed vividly, her naturally flowing black hair, her lonely and sharp eyes in the warehouse, her possessive, tight embrace. Vera suddenly realized that her defiance was no longer aimed at breaking rules for the sake of ideals, but breaking rules for the sake of love. She had fallen in love with the frigid Chief Cultivator, had accepted the danger and the taboo to become her sole equal. This love was not tenderness, but an absolute commitment to power. I must win. For her. Finally, the password was cracked. Inside the laptop, Vera found what Victor had never dared to reveal. Marius had used his charity fund to exploit and manipulate his own daughter studying abroad. He was not only blackmailing her, but psychologically distorting the girl so she would become the sole heir. In order to control all assets and reputation, he had sent forged evidence about the girl's mental health status to prevent her from acting freely. This was not just an economic crime, this was a vicious family betrayal. The kind that could completely destroy Marius's public reputation and credibility. Vera swiftly copied all the evidence. She left the apartment before dawn broke, a sense of triumph mixed with a chill running down her spine. She had not only found the trump card, but also discovered a painful truth. Carrying the USB stick containing the truth, Vera returned to the convent, but did not go straight to Isabella's room. She knew that the moment this evidence was revealed, Marius would not hesitate to use the photo and the matchbox to retaliate. She had to act. She went straight to her own room, opened the heavy wooden door, and prepared for the final confrontation. She would not merely hand the evidence to Isabella, she would face the enemy with her. Vera did not seek Isabella in the secret warehouse anymore. She knew that the decisive moment required public visibility. She went straight to the Chief Cultivator's office. The unlocked door was like a perpetual invitation between them. Isabella was standing there, looking out the window, her habit impeccable but her eyes holding a rare anxiety. She turned as Vera entered, immediately recognizing the change in her. Vera was not just a mission executor, but a warrior returning with spoils. "What did you find?" Isabella asked, her voice low and expectant. Vera strode closer, placing the USB stick on the desk. This time, she did not hold back. Not just financial secrets. "Isabella, I found Marius's human loophole. He is manipulating his own daughter with forged psychiatric evidence to control her inheritance and power. This is a more heinous crime than any fraud." Isabella's eyes flared with sharp admiration. She took the USB, but her hand immediately reached for Vera's, intertwining their fingers tightly. "This crime won't just defeat him. It will destroy him. Well done, Vera. You have surpassed all my expectations." But before they could celebrate, a cold knock echoed on the door. The door opened, and Professor Marius stood there, a sinister smile on his face. "How touching, Chief Cultivator Isabella," Marius said, a phone in his hand, displaying the blurry photo of them in the warehouse. "I am here to negotiate your mistake. If your ledger is made public, so is this forbidden romance. You must resign, and the convent land will belong to me. Otherwise, I will send proof of this clandestine homosexual nun to every supreme authority." He looked at Vera with utter contempt. "And you, Sister Vera, will be expelled for violating your vows. Your freedom will end in public humiliation." Isabella did not flinch. She squeezed Vera's hand tighter, transferring her strength and composure to her. "Professor Marius," Isabella replied, her voice resonating with unshakable authority. "You have made a mistake. I had no intention of hiding anything. I invited you here to witness a display of power." Isabella reached out her other hand, gently stroking Vera's face, right in front of Marius. It was a gesture of absolute charm and sovereignty. "This is not a clandestine affair," Isabella declared. "This is our covenant. Sister Vera is the only person I trust to help me purge the convent of people like you. And this feeling, it is a liberation from the hypocrisy that you represent. You want to destroy me with love? I will use love to destroy you." Vera felt the power of those words. She leaned into Isabella, facing Marius with absolute defiance and pride. Isabella placed the USB stick on the table. "Now, let's talk about your daughter. Professor Marius, what is she doing abroad? And why are you sending forged reports about her psychiatric health? The evidence of your heinous crime not only affects finances but will destroy the family reputation you strive to protect. Accept the truth. Your career is over." Marius trembled. He had not anticipated Isabella acquiring this private and malicious information. His arrogance shattered. He stepped back, staring at the USB and the public challenge posed by the two women. You will pay for this," he stammered. "We already have," Vera replied, her voice cold, "with our freedom and our vows. But we win. And you have lost everything." Marius turned and fled in a state of chaos and humiliation. After Marius was overthrown, Isabella fulfilled her final promise. She used the evidence to ensure the convent's safety, then voluntarily resigned from the position of chief cultivator, admitting she had prioritized love and truth over religious authority. Vera also relinquished her vows. They left the convent together, not in repentance, but in absolute self-possession. Months later, Isabella and Vera were at a small, secluded house by the coast, where they ran a small non-governmental legal organization, continuing their fight against injustice with their own unique and effective methods. Mid-morning, Vera was sitting reading an old law book, her legs curled up on the leather sofa. She wore a simple white shirt, but her eyes still held their characteristic sharpness and challenge. Isabella walked into the living room. She wore a fitted black silk dress, her hair down. She approached Vera. Unhurriedly, she placed a cup of hot coffee on the table, then leaned down, wrapping her arms around Vera from behind. Her hands rested on Vera's shoulders, her fingers lightly tracing the bare collarbone. "Do you regret it, Vera?" Isabella whispered into her ear, her voice low and filled with possessive allure. "Giving up your title, giving up everything for someone as tyrannical as me?" Vera felt the familiar electric current run down her spine. She placed the book down, leaning her head back to rest on Isabella's shoulder. She raised her hand, taking Isabella's hand resting on her shoulder, her thumb gently stroking her lover's long, slender knuckle. The expression on her face was a defiant and happy smile. "I never regret the freedom I fought for, Isabella," she replied, "and I won that by accepting a covenant with a queen more defiant than myself. This is the only truth I serve." Vera turned, facing Isabella. She raised her hand, gently but firmly threading it through Isabella's soft hair, pulling her closer. This kiss was an absolute assertion of sovereignty between them. Isabella returned the kiss with familiar intensity, her hand moving down to Vera's waist, gripping tightly. She whispered between breaths, "Just stay here, my rebel. Just keep challenging me. That is what keeps me." Vera let out a triumphant smile, her eyes sparkling with pride and love. She nodded, a simple motion laden with every vow they had broken and kept. The two women leaned into each other in the morning light, their image a perfect fusion of power and love, of defiance and acceptance.